The next item on our agenda today is House Bill 18, which is sponsored by Representative Ryan Dotson. Representative Dotson, would you please come to the table, and anyone that wants to come and sit with you at the table at this time, have them please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of this committee. I'm Representative Ryan Dotson. I represent the 73rd District, which is all of Clark County and part of Fayette County. And I have a gentleman here that I'll let him introduce himself as well.
Please introduce yourself, sir.
Hello, everyone. This is Shannon Denniston from Mount Sterling, Kentucky. My wife, Elizabeth, and I have resided there our entire life. Well, I have. She's from Shelbyville. But we provide housing to a lot of different people. We've been doing it more than 20 years. And it's just the laws and different things are starting to kind of change or starting to go in a direction that's creating more of a problem instead of a solution. So we're here today to hopefully present a few ideas that may help solve some of the problems that we're facing today.
Thank you, Mr. Denniston. Representative Dotson, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. Today I bring before this committee a piece of legislation that stops the blatant government overreach that is currently taking place in Jefferson County and now being considered in Fayette. And what this overreach does, it forces individual property owners to take Section 8 vouchers and other government assistance, which disallows property owners the ability to vet their prospective tenants, such as taking an application that would ask for maybe prior landlords so they could check and see what type of condition they left their prior property in, sources of income, credit checks, or whatever else the landlord may deem necessary to determine if someone qualifies for that property. Property ownership is a basic tenet of capitalism. And I've always been a very strong proponent of local control. My voting record reflects that. I believe that we need to keep things as local and in control as much as possible. But at the same time, there has to be a line drawn in the sand when citizens, and especially my constituents in Fayette County, are being told by the government that this is what's going to take place. And so we have to understand that housing is an issue. There is a shortage of it, but how do we address it? Forcing this upon our individual property owners is not the way to go. For me, as being a landlord in the past, there was a section of my portfolio that I would use for Section 8 housing because the investment that I had in it warranted that investment. Then there was a portion of my portfolio that I would not because my investment was so much greater. And to be told as a property owner that I have to do this is truly not the American way. And so we stand here today to bring before this committee an opportunity to stop it now before it trickles into other communities across the state. Many landlords have and will continue to accept Section 8 housing. No problem there, but never to be forced to do so. And the thing is that we're starting to see problems arise from these mandates locally. You take someone who only has 2 or 3 properties, rather than to fight this with the local city, they're selling them. They're selling their properties, which takes them out of the rental market. So we're starting to see that trickle effect. Now you'll see, and I've talked with some landlords, I've met with some landlord associations, and many of them are just pulling up stakes out of Louisville, pulling up stakes out of Fayette County because they don't want to deal with this. It's a blatant government overreach. So today, House Bill 18 addresses that, and it puts a stop to disallowing the landlords to have the opportunity to vet appropriately for their properties. There is a Section 2, which is a part of this bill as well, and some of you may have not heard it, but it is taking place, is that property owners are being liable or being made to be financially responsible for if a tenant in an EMS situation, a first responder situation, rather than billing the tenant, they bill the landlord. And that in itself is really another overreach. And we needed to address these things now and start talking about real ways to fix our housing problems. This time, I'd like to allow my guest to speak for a few moments.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Representative Dawson.
Make sure your light's green.
Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you. Great.
You may proceed.
I just want to echo what Mr. Dodson said about it being a form of government overreach, and it certainly is. Property rights, I believe hopefully everybody in this room will agree that we need to respect property rights. And government has a history. They tried to do government housing in the past, and it failed. There's some reasons why specifically it failed and why government now is not as excited about providing the housing itself. In Lexington, there's a need for more affordable housing. Where did it go? Not just Lexington, but other towns, small and large, across the bluegrass are faced with the same exact issue. There's just not enough housing to go around. So how do we get to this point in time? Mobile home parks, they've been getting squeezed out, and new ones can't be built because cities don't want them. Even if they're put on permanent foundations and look identical to the homes on either side of them, they're being prohibited in most cities. Tiny homes are very popular today. A lot of jurisdictions are restricting the square footage of a dwelling unit. Parking is a huge issue. A lot of cities are ultra restrictive on the number of parking stalls you must have per dwelling unit. We build multifamily housing, so these are all issues that we've been faced with. I have a very well-rounded approach on this topic. For instance, in Lexington, there was a couple housing developments called Bluegrass, Aspendale, and Charlotte Court. They were both raised because the city of Lexington didn't want those housing projects. I believe new housing was put in their place, but I'm not sure that it was the same number of units. It's possible that maybe the number of units were reduced. New housing has been extremely limited because of the urban service area and hasn't grown enough to support the population. The few people who own buildable land inside the urban service area can just wait and sell and watch the prices climb. What's the common thread here? It's Lexington wants a beautiful city. I'm sure other cities substitute your city for Lexington, but Lexington wants a beautiful city surrounded by horse farms more than it wants affordable housing. And then city government wants to dump the problem on us. If they would just take the handcuffs off, we would gladly solve this problem for everyone. Lexington passed a law allowing accessory dwelling units. This is another great example, but they made it so restrictive that hardly any of them are being built today. Again, beauty seems to trump affordable housing, and that's the issue. We want big, magnificent, few and quantity structures, and we want them to be beautiful instead of having plentiful structures and housing enough to go around. My wife and I, we've been wanting to build 84 new units of housing in our small town where we live. It's a town I grew up in. I'm fourth generation of my family to live there. I'm very proud of Mount Sterling, Kentucky. And we've been fighting tooth and nail to bring additional housing for many years now to our city. And it seems every time we do, we're faced with roadblocks. And it's not just our city. I don't want to single out my city. I see this in other cities as well because I speak with other developers on a regular basis. And just want to note, it took us 5 years to get 60 of those units approved. 5 years to get 60 units of housing approved. And we attended more than 30 planning and zoning meetings. This was time away from family, from sporting events that our children participated in, and other things, as you can imagine. The question I have is it going to take us another 5 years to get those other 24 additional units approved? You know, it's a time-consuming ordeal. The amount of regulations are mind-boggling. It's no wonder hardly anyone is developing housing today where it's desperately needed. City governments make it near impossible. Unless you have hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of time, you don't even stand a chance today. There's no telling how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of our own money that the city has cost us over the years with delays in our housing developments and unnecessary items like additional parking stalls and new drainage requirements that no one else in town has had to do in the past. It's almost like we're singled out in some cases, but it's not just in our city, it's across our state.
Mr. Denniston,
yes.
I need you to wrap up if you could, please,
Yes, sir.
We have several people that's going to speak after you. So if you could just wrap up in about a minute, please.
Yes, sir. So I guess I could summarize all this and just say no one should be forced to do business with the government. No one should be forced to do business with the government. Property rights should be respected. If you purchase a piece of property with your hard-earned money, I believe you should be able to utilize it to the best of your ability, so long as it does not hurt anyone else. That's the best way I can summarize it. Government is trying to fix a problem without educating the people that it affects. That's another big issue. We have people who use government services their entire lifetime, and it shouldn't be that way. These programs should be temporary, and they should be a safety net, not a way of life. So it's a big issue that we're trying to solve here with, I think, one or two bills, but it's a larger picture. The biggest stakeholders, they're not being brought to the table. Not once have housing providers been asked for advice, and I find it very interesting. Also, the program itself, I just want to wrap up in closing. The programs should be improved so that they are voluntary instead of forced. For instance, the EBT card program is voluntary. Grocers don't have to accept that program if they don't want to, but they do because it's a voluntary program and there's parameters in place and different things. But the problem that you have with housing when you try to apply, say, Section 8 to it is you have a housing voucher recipient that has a non-garnishable wage. And when there are damages that arise, where does that money come from? You can't take the person to court because it's impossible to collect. We all know that. And what my proposal is that we require the housing voucher issuers to stand responsible for the damages in the form of a bond or an insurance type program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.